Dan, for as long as I've known you, you are a lot of things, but I think for today, you are not a lot of things.
Oh, what am I not? I'm afraid to hear
You,
this.
well, you're not hip. You're not you're not up on current trends. You're not like I just know every time I reference a TV show, you're like, "What's a TV?"
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
I would agree. I'm not up to modern. Well, see, I'm a trend setter. I'm not a trend follower. So I don't
Yeah.
know all the trends going on.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah, I've just gotten to know you enough to know that if something funny happened and I reference it to like a old episode of The Waltons or Little House on the Prairie or Gilligan's Island, you have not a clue what I'm talking about.
No idea. Yeah, not
Yeah.
at all.
I guess they didn't teach that in that one room schoolhouse that you went to.
No, the and at home the TV only had one channel. So it was PBS. We
Channel,
didn't see.
yeah, or Channel 61, right? Yeah. Yeah, so here's where I'm thinking, Dan. I would like to have a current events discussion with you, but you may not understand, but maybe you will. And my observation is, holy cow, aren't things expensive anymore?
Yeah, and well, I have noticed that not only the price has gone up, but the quantity has gone down of
Yeah.
many
Well,
things.
there's a term for that. I'm of course talking about inflation, where everything's getting more expensive. And then
Yes.
what you're talking about has a term. It's called shrinkflation. Yeah.
Yes,
Have you heard of shrinkflation before?
I have. And not only after jumping in a cold swimming pool. But yes, I have heard it. In fact, I experienced it last night.
Yeah.
I went to make chicken strips that we always get like a certain type of chicken strips, and I opened up the bag, I dumped it in the air fryer, and there was not enough of these chicken strips for even like a family of three. It was tough to for two of us to eat off of the amount that was in there.
They kind of tricked you. The packaging was the same. There was just less
Exactly.
contents. Yeah.
Yes.
And then
Yep.
when you read the fine print, you notice that they also changed the content size, or
Right.
the writing, the whatever it is, the net weight of the product. You don't notice that until it's too late.
Yeah, I never knew what the net weight, was before, so I have no idea if it, but it definitely has gone down.
Yeah. Well, here's some more shrinkflation. Burger King, order a Whopper Junior from them and look at it. You got to have a magnifying glass to see it. My other go-to is the McDonald's fish sandwich. I love their tartar sauce. But I haven't gotten one of those in a while. But they have this sale going on, and holy cow, they're like hockey pucks. They're guppies. They're not big. It's not
Yeah.
big fish. They got the fish out of an aquarium, not out of the ocean.
No kidding.
They're making
Yep.
it smaller. The price has gone up, and the product's gotten smaller. It's shrinkflation, if not inflation.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention all the other stuff, of course, food, gas, cars,
Everything.
chainsaws,
Yep.
yeah, oil. I
Right.
am old enough to remember that a quart of motor oil was always 99 cents. And there are some crazy prices for a quart of motor oil out there now.
Yeah.
Car batteries, I just remember car batteries, 39.99.
Yep.
And now you can put like a number 2 in front of that. Gee whiz.
Yeah, our previous vehicle, when it was getting towards the end of the time we were having it, we'd always have to add a little oil because for some reason it was burning oil. And so the one day I said, I'm going to go grab, 3 quarts of oil from the gas station. I went up there, picked 3 of them up, went to the register. I said, what? How much is this a bottle?
Yeah.
Holy moly's. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. That reminds me, my truck, leaks oil. The one truck leaks oil, but I noticed it's been getting a lot better. It's not leaking as much. And then I checked, I checked the oil the other day. There's no oil left in it. That's
Yeah,
why it's not.
it's
That's not
below the
why it's
leak.
not leaking anymore. Yeah. Oh yeah. So anyhow, shrinkflation, and I recall reading somewhere one time. Have you ever noticed that when you buy gas for your car, that you're not buying, it's like $3 a gallon. It's not $3 a gallon. It's $3.09
Yep.
a gallon.
Oh
And
yeah.
think they did that. That's a tradition that started, I think, back in the days when gas prices got real high all of a sudden. I think. I don't know. But have you ever noticed that when you look at something with like shrinkflation, the contents aren't what you think it is. Objects in mirror are smaller than they appear.
Yep.
And then with gasoline, you're not buying a gallon of gasoline. You're buying 9/10 of a gallon of gasoline, something like
Right.
that.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It appears you're getting what you think, but you're not.
The old switcheroo. So
Yeah.
it made me start thinking, why not? Why not do that for firewood, Dan?
Oh.
Instead of selling a cord of firewood, it would be, like $400 for a cord, but it would be $400 and it would be cord 9.
9/10 of a cord.
9/10 of a cord for the price of a cord.
Right.
Just put a
Uh,
number 9 after the end of it. You think we could do something like that?
yeah, and we may as well cut the pieces at like 14 and 7/8 inches. Start bringing them down a little, you
Yeah.
know.
We could really add money to our bottom line. We're starting to think like accountants. I read somewhere it was a airline that determined that they could save the company like $700,000 a year if they would quit putting olives on their salads for their in-flight meals.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
can
only
believe
the
that. Yep.
yeah. So let's get some firewood accountants and let's start cutting our sticks at, this is some serious math here, 15 and 7/8 of an inch. And we can and we can advertise our cords as 9/10.
Yeah. How many pieces would you need to cut to make to get an extra piece then? What would it be? About 15 pieces?
Yeah,
16? I
boy,
don't know.
I don't know. I need to do a video on this because I just ran just about 6 cords of firewood of oak through my processor, and I totally filled up one of the bladders that goes inside of the IBC totes.
Hmm.
So, when you think about a 3/8 kerf when with your saw, you're
Yeah.
taking 3/8 an inch every time you cut. And
Yep.
that would start to add up after a while, after like 1,000 cords.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've had that comment mentioned to me before as well. That every cut, you're losing, you're losing wood. But it's like, well, how else are you supposed to cut it?
Yeah, how else are you supposed to, with a
Yeah.
magic wand or something maybe? Yeah. So I was thinking about the firewood industry, about the way things get sold with shrinkflation, and a lot of these, like, the boxes of cereal have less contents in them, but the box is the same size. They're cheating you. They're being deceptive. And it's kind of interesting when you think of the firewood industry. I don't ever see the firewood industry playing games like that, where we just start cutting our logs at 15-inch, or we sell a cord as 9/10 of a cord. But I did stumble upon bundled firewood before, and it was measured on the label as 0.66
Oh,
cubic foot instead of Our traditional is 3/4, 0.75 of a
Yep.
cubic foot.
Yep.
Yeah, this was 0.66. It made me scratch my head. Why are they doing that? I thought maybe I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. They're just trying to keep weights and measures off of them, and they're still putting, 3/4 of a cubic foot in the bundle. But maybe they are. They're just selling less wood.
Well, yeah. I mean, what was the length of the pieces? Maybe that was another thing. Is
It looked the same to me when I was just looking at the bundle. I was like, yeah, okay, bundled firewood. But then when I picked it up, I was looking at the label because I was always looking at labels more than the product, just because of
yeah.
my own label, my own bundle program. I just like to see what everyone else is doing. And I noticed, what the heck? It was not 0.75. It was 6 points. It was 0.66 something.
But I don't think that stuff really matters to a customer. Like that's I get into this sometimes. We go back and forth about like the measurement of it's supposed to be a chord or a fraction thereof or whatever.
Yeah.
But even the chord, I think, is a measurement that's way outdated, and I
Yeah,
don't
it
know.
is.
It just
Totally is.
doesn't make a lot of sense to consumers, and you always hear like people are always warning customers about making sure they get enough or they get the right amount or they don't get ripped off.
Yeah.
And it's like like have you ever had a person say to you, don't go down to that gas station on the corner because your gallon of gas isn't going to be a gallon, or
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just something weird about firewood that seems there's this reputation that you always got to watch out that you're not getting ripped off.
Yeah, a very good point. And I can't. It was like it was a city. I can't. Probably New York City somewhere, where they have rules on how much ice you can put. A restaurant can put into a to-go cup of, Dr. Pepper,
Oh,
because that's the way that they could cut the product, is by filling it up with ice, and
yep.
they would have to put in less. So they had like a law where you could only put in so much ice. But a government, a city or a local municipality will get that deep into the weeds to protect the consumer, which I'm a consumer. Um, so you take the good with the bad. I like to see
Yep.
someone
Well, yeah.
sticking up for us,
Yeah.
but you don't hear it in firewood. And here in Ohio, they got a bunch of pretty clearly written rules about the selling of firewood in the state, but I don't ever see, the firewood police out there. I don't know if and how and when, if ever, it's ever been enforced or ever has been or is being or will be.
And I think the state of Ohio has one of the rules that makes absolutely no sense, where they define seasoned firewood as under 50%.
Yeah, 50%. Yeah.
So that should tell you how much they actually know about the industry of firewood.
Yeah. I love my state of Ohio, but there are some bizarre things that happen here, like
Yeah. Yeah.
cell phone coverage here. God. I was like, you could put robots on Mars, but you can't get a cell phone to work in Ohio. So,
Nope.
yeah. Yeah. So that got me thinking, why is that though? When I put on my thinking cap, and whenever I go to a residential delivery, it's always a friendly discussion. And all I need to do is start talking about who they used to get their wood from, and it always comes up, that they ripped me off. I never got what I was asking for. The wood was green. It was all pine. It was just odd shapes. Wouldn't even fit in my furnace. It was too big. And the quantity was wrong. I bought wood one time off of Facebook. The guy had a dump truck, and it was advertised as about a cord. And I stacked it. Now just the physical stack was less than a half of a cord, but it would have been
Well,
even less than that because there's so many just odds and ends in it, like 6-inch pieces.
well, it was about then. It was close. It
Yeah,
was about a chord.
it was
Come on. What do
about
you mean?
nothing. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. I it's it's really, like I said, I don't know what it is about the firewood industry, but there's just this weird dynamic that you have people who like sell who get upset about other people who sell at different quantities other than cords, but yet there's one common theme that it seems floating around with the consumer, and that is watch out because you're going to get ripped off.
Yeah, the quantity is always wrong.
Yeah.
And I'll take that one step further. The quantity is always short.
Yes.
Yeah. I have I have never seen, other than my own, that's not accurate. I saw one other time before where the stated quantity was correct. It's always short, always. And that got me. Did I ask you this question before? I asked someone this question. What is a stick of firewood worth to you? You know, is it
Yeah.
worth your
I
reputation?
I don't know. No.
Come on, man. Why is it, Dan? Why are delivery quantities always short? Why?
That is the $1,000,000 question. No idea.
No idea. Now, I'm sure that there are a number of our listeners who are they're either professional delivery services or they are hobbyists, and they can confidently say my quantities are always correct. Or some people always say I always give more than
Yes. Yep.
the stated quantity. And, I've evolved over time. I always heard that and I tried to do that, but then I got away from that. I believe that the customer gets the quantity they paid for, not a stick more or a stick less.
Right.
So, and then I always consider myself, on stage when I get called out to a delivery, because a lot of my people have firewood racks. And gosh, is it a great feeling that when you stack that out into their rack and it comes out perfect,
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because there's nowhere to hide if a customer has a 12-foot rack, 4 foot tall. It's going to be pretty obvious.
Yep.
Why is it always short? And then there was the one guy, he stacked his wood out. Well, what the heck? It was the guy from, he's a YouTube channel up in Cleveland. I delivered wood to him, and I was on his YouTube channel, Weekend Warrior Barbecue. And he stacked his wood out. The guy dumped it on the ground and left, and he stacked it, and it was short. He says by about like 2 wheelbarrows full of wood was missing. And he calls the guy up and he says, "Oh, no, no, no. You got it. When we stacked that wood, back in the winter time, it was, a full third of a cord, but that it shrank that much because it's seasoned now." It's like,
Yeah.
come on. That is just crazy. You buy a third of a cord, you get a third of a cord.
Yes. And I'm not saying, I don't think you're saying either, that everyone out there, listening, that all firewood suppliers are ripping people off. What I'm saying is that of all the people out there who are legitimately selling accurate amounts of firewood, why is it that the common theme among the consumer is watch out because you're probably not going to get what you pay for? Like, why is it that all these other guys supplying firewood are always shorting people on the amount?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, I guess there's a whole gamut of possibilities. The
Yep.
one is the person's a ripoff. They're doing it deliberately. The others is they just don't know, or they're just sloppy or lazy,
Yeah. Don't
or
care. They don't
it was
care.
a mistake. Yeah, it was a mistake or something. So there's a whole bunch of different reasons why, but I would think that it falls back upon professionalism. And that's not just that you are a business doing this, because you can be the hobbyist and it can still be professional at what you do. And, the quantity's got to be correct. Why is it is there, Dan, is there any other industry out there that the consumer would tolerate not getting what they're paying for? You buy a dozen eggs, you get 10 when you open the carton. You would be right back to the grocery store over
Yes.
that.
Yep.
You buy a pound of bologna, you get 3/4 of a pound. You buy a gallon of gasoline, you get 7/10 of a gallon.
Yeah.
You buy 4 tires, you get 3.
Yeah. I don't know. Although I will now flip this around on you for a little bit here. And if I were to put out there for sale a truckload of firewood and a consumer were to see my ad with a picture and they wanted to buy it, would it matter how much was in that truckload if I'm advertising as just the truckload? Here it is, or a wheelbarrow full. Here's a wheelbarrow full for $7. Does it
Yeah.
matter if it's a cubic foot, 2 cubic feet? So that's the other side of this. Like, where does it, like, I don't know. I don't know if that.
Do you get the sense that as a customer who's buying firewood, they just have this innate sense of how much money they're putting down and how much wood they're looking at laying in their driveway? Maybe that's why. If they
Yeah.
see a truck show up and they're wanting $50 for it, and you're just kind of standing there looking at it, and you just, intuitively just go, close enough. That's fair.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Maybe we are holding the delivery service, the provider, at a higher standard. Well, they should be, but I'm saying that maybe the consumer needs to educate themselves. Probably the consumer plays a big role in this whole situation, don't you think?
They do. Yes. But again, if I had a banana crate and I had four of them and here's 4 crates of wood for $50, that's where I get into this. Like, do I have to have a fraction of a cord? Because it isn't going to matter to the person if they don't even know what a cord is. They just know they're getting
Yeah.
these 4 crates for $50.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I ultimately believe it's the delivery services issue. They must play by the rules. They must take steps to ensure that the consumer is taken care of, because you not just represent yourself and your last name, but also the entire industry.
The industry, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's in the tank. I mean, that's like I said, everyone you talk to who's ever dealt with firewood at some point has a story about getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh. And I don't know what the answers are. I don't know. And I just know that I do my part. I do take steps to educate the customers. I even educate customers that aren't even mine, because I still get a lot of calls wanting to order firewood and they decide they don't want to buy off of me. But I still teach them, about how the best way to order firewood off of a person. You ask, when was this wood split?
yep,
What are the species? Is there any oak in it? Because, if it was all split at the same time, the maple might burn, but the oak's not going to. And you don't want to gum up your chimney. Yeah.
see, and for me with the mini firewood, now it's a whole nother uh, facet of this conversation because my box holds, what is it, 864 cubic inches.
Yeah.
So if I were to calculate that out for a fraction of a cord, I mean, what the heck would that be?
Yeah.
One.
Well, okay, I can only speak for Ohio, but they do distinguish between, bulk and packaged. So in that case, it would just simply be whatever your unit of measurement is, either weight or volume.
Yeah.
So for instance, your box size would probably dictate the contents therein.
Ah, okay. Well, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then are bundles considered packaged? So like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why it was
S-
0.66 cubic feet.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Ah, yeah.
Cubic feet. Yeah. So that was like my bundles. I had just learned, because I used to sell 1 cubic foot bundles, and I was like, I don't know about this. So I went to 0.75 and found that to be more profitable.
Yes.
And that's just a unit. So even like that measurement's kind of hokey, because it's like, oh, this is terrible here. Ask, me trying to talk about numbers. So like the measurement is of my machine, which makes, well, I'm going to put it in quotation marks here, allegedly makes 3/4 cubic feet of a bundle. So you got a 16-inch stick, and then the width of the cradle is 9 inches by 9 inches.
Yeah.
No,
No.
12 inches wide, 9 inches tall.
Okay.
And the
Yep.
sticks are 16 inch. So if you do your math there, it kind of comes out to 3/4 of a cubic foot. And then whenever I mention that on my videos, I'll get a comments, like a mathematician saying, no, no, no. And then I just ignore that comment and I go on to the next one. Math. I can spell
Yes.
numbers. That's about it.
Right. Yeah. But with that example, like, do you think when someone goes to buy your bundle and they say, "Oh, 0.75 cubic feet," well, like I don't like that's where I don't think it becomes as big of an issue where people don't are like trying to compare. Well, I
Yeah.
saw 1 cubic foot and this is 0.75. I mean, how many pieces? Like, I think they just buy it. Like, I don't think it even
Yeah.
matters.
But it seems to me that the consumer would be more likely to complain about that than, they would complain about coming in a little bit under of 3/4 of a cubic foot in a bundle, but then they'd have a dump truck load dumped onto their driveway, and then they just think everything's fine.
Yeah.
But if they stacked it out and if they knew quantities, they would see that they just got ripped off by a whole quarter of a cord. Yeah. And that's another thing I just reminded myself of too. On two separate occasions, and it happened in the same year. I was looking to buy firewood, and I went to this guy's house, and he really made nice firewood. Did a great job. It was all stacked in 8-foot rows with T posts, so thirds of a cord. And I says, "Great, I'll buy a cord." So he was mentioning about these two ranks over here I can have, and I go, "No, no, no. A cord is 3 of these." And he says, "Oh, no, it isn't. It is 2 of these." And I was like, "Well, I tell you what, I've changed my mind." The guy thought that a cord was 2 8-foot sections.
Oh
And
yeah.
then later in the year, right across the lake from where I live, it happened again. Guy says, "Nope, 16 feet of firewood is a cord." I says, "It's 24 feet." "No, it isn't."
No. Yes. No.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
The sun will come up in the west tomorrow.
Yeah. Quantities are always short, Dan.
Yep. Well, and maybe to your point in the beginning, maybe we need to. Maybe that's the trend. Maybe we just haven't been. The shrinkflation is hitting. I don't know. Maybe firewood has been ahead of the game with shrinkflation.
Uh-huh. How would you show a 9/10 of a cord? Like when they sell gasoline at it's 2.99.9 is
Yeah.
the price. So I guess we would say if you're selling for 400 a cord, you would sell it for 3.99. Got to sell 9/10 of a cord.
Yeah. I don't know how you would advertise that,
Yeah, I don't know
but
either. Oh yeah. But that came up a couple days ago. You were talking about you were like, is there any other industry in the world that tolerates the quantities being sold always being wrong?
yeah, or just
And
being, varying, like
yeah, and
wide
we couldn't
range.
think of any.
No,
We
I
couldn't
couldn't.
think of any. No, uh-uh.
Or where there's
Rudib
always that, where if you talk to people, they always will say, you have to watch out when you're buying, when you go buy iced tea from the grocery store, make sure you're getting a gallon because,
uh-huh.
I went to this place and I only got, 7/8 of a gallon there.
Yeah. I don't know where it is where you live, but here all the gas pumps in Ohio got a sticker on it, from the state auditor. And
Yep.
if you think that the wrong quantity came out, you call that number and then they send someone out and they have those cans that they audit the pumps to
Ooh.
make sure that they're giving the right amount. I was like, I hope they don't ever do that in the firewood industry. They better
Ooh.
staff up that position. Got to hire someone else.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if we solved anything here. today or not?
Yeah, I just know that prices are going up. I know that my prices have gone up, but that's because my cost of goods have gone up. But certainly it's reflecting in my price. But I can look anyone in the eye and say my quantities are correct. If you buy a half a quart off of me, by golly, that's what you're getting.
You're getting a half cord.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
9/10 of a half of a cord.
9.99 tenths of a
Yeah.
half a cord.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're just going to have to go out and buy another bag of chicken strips.
Yeah. Gonna have to
Lesson
buy
learned there.
two of them
Yeah.
for one meal now.
Gosh,
Crazy stuff.
sure is. All right, Dan. Well, how about let's strike up the band and let's thank everyone for tuning in to the Woodhounds podcast, the #1 firewood podcast in the world.
That indeed we are. And we are on every Wednesday morning on all major streaming services. Tune in, have a listen, and give us a 5-star review if you feel we deserve it.
They'll give us a
4.99.
4.49 star. But you will always get 9/10 of an episode from us.
Yes.
Yes. All right, Dan. Well, how about let's tell everyone out there to be
safe
and stay
cool.
9/10 cool and have
a great day.